How's it going, guys? Welcome to another solo encoded tutorial. Today we're going to be covering the solutions to the part 1 of my functions video. So let's dive into the challenges, and we're starting off with variable functions. Create a function, my name, where you pass an argument into it and you log that function and invoke it. You also have to assign the function with a variable named favorite function, so it's assigning functions to a variable. We're also going to create a function called powered by with an optional parameter. So let's start with the first variable function. So create a function my name. So let's do that. Function my name. There you go. And we also have to pass in an argument of name. So let's do that. And then let's just log my name here. Let's say my name is like so. Now we need to invoke it. So right here, and then let's pass in my name and do that. Let's node the functions.js. This is just the name of the file that I named it, and there it is. My name is John, which it is. My name is John. So let's go back to Adam. So that was super easy, right? Let's comment this out and let's go to the next one. Assign a function to a variable favorite function. So let's say var favorite func. And then let's create an anonymous function. And one of my favorite functions that we've been doing multiple times is the add function. So let's actually pass in two numbers here, two variables there, or two arguments or parameters, and then let's return the summation of these two, and then let's invoke it, favorite func, and then let's pass in 2 and then 3, or like so. One thing before, we need to console log this because we're only returning the value, we're not logging it, so we won't actually see anything. And then there's 5, so that worked out just fine. Let me bump this up a little bit. Okay, so far so good. 2 of the challenges out of the variable functions challenge is done. Now the third one, the powered by function. So let's go here and create a function called powered by. Now if you guys don't know what powered by is, it's just a math function. So let's create the powered by function. Let's say here this is kind of weird because you usually would make the exponent the optional one, but I made it based on purpose to try to trick you guys. Sorry. So it says to make the base number by default by 2. So let's do that. Base equals 2. To default, you just you can assign it right there, and then we will have to pass in an exponent. So x, and then now to do the math to do the power by, we're going to use a math object called math.pow, and then we'll do base and exponent. So this thing right here, it calls the math object, and then the math object has a pow function that does the power by and then returns the value to us. So let's return this value, and then we can console log this, console log power by 2 4. So this will work, right? Base will be 2 and it will be powered by 4. So let's go and try that. And it's 16, so that's cool. But in this particular challenge, it also says try to send it without a default value. So let's do that. So we don't want to send the base anything, but this will actually error out, I believe. Not a number error. So why is that? Well, one tidbit about optional parameters is that you have to place them at the very end of your arguments when you're defining them originally. So this right here, base, actually has to be over here. And that way, because the order that you pass in your arguments is very important. So for example, if you went back here and then added last name here, like so, and then in this example, let's switch out. Let's put my last name, which is Kim, and then put my first name, which is John. If I did this, my name is name plus space plus last name. So if we did this example right here, it would switch out my first name and last name, right? The reason why that's happening is because I'm passing my last name first and my first name afterwards. But in the function arguments, I'm expecting the first name first and the last name afterwards. So the order of which you pass these arguments really matter. And going back to our power example, now that I switch this, 4 is the exponent. So let's just change that to 2. And then now the base can be anything, right? So now if we don't pass anything, it will still work because base will still have a value. So previously the optional argument was being overridden, and then the second value was not being passed, which made it undefined. So when you're trying to use the math function by passing an undefined, it gives you a not a number error. Long-winded but explanation, but that's pretty much what it is. So there you go, we have 4 there, and that's it for the variable functions challenge. So let's go to the next challenge. Quick coffee break. Next topic, super important topic, my scope, your scope. So in the write-up, I created a file, essentially a program that doesn't work. So let's copy it over and let's run it. But before I run it, I want to show you guys how, when you're in the real world, you're going to start running functions and things will be broken, things might happen. So learning how to read the error messages is super important. For us to solve this problem, we're going to invoke the program and then we're going to see what the errors come out and we're going to try to fix it one by one using the error message as a guide. At the same time, we're going to be looking at how scopes work. So let's go ahead and run this function. So first error is a syntax error, unexpected token, and the right curly brace. Whenever I see that, that's a sign that maybe we have an extra curly brace or not enough curly braces. So let's take a look. So with modern IDEs, they usually kind of highlight this for you. So for example, if you look here, it's hard to see. Let me bump it up really deeply. It's kind of hard to see, but let's say I highlight this. You see that blue underline? That means that these are matching curly braces. So let me bump that back down. So this one doesn't have one. So it's probably an extra one. So let's go ahead and delete that body, clear the log, and then go back. Now we have a different error. It's called a reference error. Add is not defined. Now I mentioned that reference errors is probably one of the most common bugs that you'll ever face. So get used to it, learn how to debug it. But it just usually means that what you're trying to invoke is nowhere to be found in the scope or in the program at all. That's pretty much what that means. So let's find where that invocation happens. So it looks like it's on line 19. We're calling return and we're calling the add function. Now let's look at the scope where that function add is being invoked. So that scope is a global scope, and it looks like only get user input and these variables are available to us in the global scope. However, in the scope one level deeper, inside the get user input scope, there is the add function. So let's move that body add up to line 18 and re-invoke the function. And there you go. Now we have a different reference error. Reference error, sum is not defined. Notice that the add reference error disappeared, right? So let's do the same method and find where sum is. Another thing that I want to point out is right here. So these, you may think these are like random numbers, but they actually tell you what the line where the error happened. And also right here, it also tells you the space at which so line and then space. So let's go to line 16 right here, and this is where it's breaking. It's trying to find sum, but it doesn't know where sum is. And it looks like we have a very similar problem because the add function scope is right here, and the variables that are available to us are, or the declarations are that are available to us is A, B, this check number, and that's it. So the sum is actually inside this check number. So let's move that sum, return sum up here, and then let's run it again. Looks like we have fixed it, but there's this weird undefined log at the very end. So let's follow these logs and then see where the error is occurring. So value 1 is 5, so looks like that's over here. And the reason why I know this and the reason why I put these logs here is to demonstrate the fact that you can access the way scope works is you can access variables from the global scope or the parent scope and inwards. So you could access scope, things that are defined outside of your scope, inside of your inner scope, but you cannot do it the other way. And that's why we're getting the reference error. When you start programming on your own, you're going to run into these errors, but having a good understanding of scope will help you solve a lot of problems. So this A right here is getting pulled in from the variables from the global scope. So that's totally fine. Now, this last log here is returning an undefined, is printing an undefined. So what is undefined again? Undefined is all undefined is just an absence of a value. So that means whenever I see that, that usually means something that I'm expecting doesn't have a value. So here we're expecting something to be returned to us, a value to be returned to us. But because that is not defined or undefined, probably nothing's being returned to us. So let's check that assumption. So get user, is it returning anything? It is returning something down here. It is actually returning this function, invoked function add. But the question again is that function returning anything? Because if that returns undefined, then it will just directly return that undefined to our get user input invocation. So let's check that out. So the add function is right here, and it doesn't actually return anything down here. It should actually return something right there, right? Because that's at the very end of this scope right here, the add. And when I look at this function, it looks like the sum should actually happen after the check number. So let's move variable sum and the return of the summation to outside of the scope of the check number. And then let's run it. And there you go, we have value 8. So that was it. That was the challenge. I hope you guys were able to solve it. This challenge can be, challenging, but I hope you guys are able to solve it. Once you have a clear understanding of scope, all of this will become very easy. And I want you guys to play around with it. Take time and try to put things in different places. See where new scopes are created. For example, this if function right here, it creates a little scope. Remember, anything that has kind of this like curly braces, that kind of creates a small internal scope, local scope for itself. So you need to have a clear understanding of this topic to get further in your journey to becoming a software engineer. So I hope that you guys are able to solve this challenge. And comment below if you feel like this kind of videos are great. I've been getting some feedback that my music is too loud, so I'll tone that down. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this challenge. Have a great rest of the day. Have a good Christmas holiday coming up, and join me in the next video. Thank you. Bye.